Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about technology, disability, and gender. Chapter 5, Technology, Disability, and Gender. The reason why we need to talk about technology and disability and gender is because there has been some inequities associated with development of young children related to the use of technology and softwares that have been developed over the past 2, 3 decades. It's estimated that about 56% of 1.2 million degree seeking students in the US are women. More and more women are becoming doctors, lawyers, professors, healthcare professionals, and entrepreneurs, business executives, chief executive officers, and so on. But despite some of the gains, we are seeing disparities that continue to exist. The question is, why do we have these disparities in terms of promotional opportunities, even salaries between men and women? Partially, one of the answers would be that there's a glass ceiling that is preventing some women and minorities from climbing up the ladder in the corporate arena or in the government public sector positions. The term glass ceiling was initially introduced and made popular back in the 80s. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 1986 in the Wall Street Journal, which described some of the invisible barriers that some minorities, which include women, confront and experience as they approach management ranks or the top of the institutional hierarchy, whether it's public sector or in the corporate environment. So the glass ceiling is one element. There might be other institutional and societal barriers that cause women to lag behind when it comes to equality of compensation and promotional opportunities. In terms of definition, the glass ceiling represents the invisible barriers that block females and other minorities from ascending into upper level management in an organization or in an institution. In other words, it's the glass ceiling because they can see that there are opportunities and positions beyond where they are currently, and they deserve and are qualified for such positions, but somehow they face more barriers getting there. So that's what we call the glass ceiling, which impacts all minorities to some extent. Factors that perpetuate disparity could include institutional and organizational structures, which constitute inertia against minorities or women, women's life stages, perhaps, when people are going through childbearing stages. They tend to perhaps take some time off. So that might be another element that sets women back to some extent, which is not fair, but nonetheless, perhaps that could be one factor. And women are not in key positions, which means that they are very few role models for everybody else. So there are limited mentoring opportunities for younger female professionals in the workplace. And there could be other institutional barriers, or there are more traditional in terms of what is being taught in school and how professors are actually teaching and creating a learning environment that is perhaps not always inclusive of both genders. I like what the talented actor in Hollywood has mentioned, Charlize Theron, that I don't think you can create anything interesting from a comfort zone. You have to work from a place of fear and failure. So it is fearful for all of us to know that disparities exist in a developed economy in today's environment. And obviously, it's a failure because 50% of all of our populations in any country is likely to be made up of women. So if we're not given them equal opportunities, that means the economy will be failing because it will not be as competitive as other economies that provide inclusionary practices for both men and women at all times. So what are the implications, for example, in such an industry as the information technology or IT industry when we have inequality between men and women in terms of compensation and other barriers that women and minorities face? While women are urged to network despite limited numbers in executive positions, it can be helpful. The women tend to be more balanced and calmer compared to their male counterparts, and perhaps more rational than men when it comes to making decisions during crisis moments. So this could be an asset in negotiation and supervising others when given the opportunity. And keep in mind that having more women in the workforce influences family-friendly legislations in our policies by the federal and state level governments. Overall, keep in mind that equality between genders tend to serve as the foundation of a country's development and construction efforts. Technology is a potential key factor of success in creating a competitive economy in North America, in Europe, and Africa, in Asia, and Latin America, in any place, obviously, in any nation, in any specific city or province around the world. Marginalized groups such as women and individuals with disabilities have the potential to play a critical role in technology use in development, provided that we give them those opportunities on a regular basis. So we all should be asking questions like, how does gender affect fair access to technology, to education, to employment in our cities, in our provinces, or our states, and our countries? And more specifically, what adaptations can we propose to provide similar fair access to individuals with disabilities in information technology and healthcare and education and transportation and retail and all these other industries that you and I deal with on a regular basis? So when it comes to why we have some differences between the two genders, according to psychology, keep in mind that there are 4 different genders: male, female, undifferentiated, and androgynous individuals. And genders are treated differently from day one. When a person is born as a female, for example, she's given different types of clothing, different types of reinforcement in terms of how to behave, compared to those who are born as boys. Think about how you and I were treated based on our gender all these years during our socialization and even as adults. So gender play socializes young men and women very differently in society. And ultimately, those young men and women become adults in the workplace. And the workplace also tends to treat them a little bit differently based on their genders. So in society, we learn to have certain preferences for what types of games we play based on our genders. Ultimately, boys and girls are socialized differently. Boys learn to be a little bit more aggressive and competitive, to follow rules, to be in control whenever possible, to explore and take risks when it comes to going above and beyond their abilities to aim for the highest position, or to be the captain, or to be the team leader when it comes to athletic games. On the other hand, young girls are socialized to be a little bit more collaborative, to be cooperative with their teammates, as opposed to winning and being in the first place or being the star. They tend to learn to follow a care approach about their teammates, about their clients, about their vendors, about even customers. So little girls tend to learn to be a lot more cautious compared to the boys who are conditioned to take risks. So when it comes to gender and technology, research shows that up to preteen years, generally we have a gender-neutral use of technology or computers. So there's equality of using computers in terms of number of hours and perhaps what to use them for, except for games. However, in preteen and onward, there's a significant decline of female users, which has been the trend over the 90s and the decade that followed. However, perception of technology as a male world, an antisocial and hacker world, negatively influences young girls from using it as often as little boys. There's also peer pressure and harassment and bullying that tend to impact both genders, However, young girls are facing more issues with regards to pressure from both their peers as well as family members in terms of being more careful. And obviously, also, there are lack of role models in society for women. Initially, during the 1980s and 1990s, the video game industry tried to introduce computer technology and integrate various games with them. There was a stereotypic male versus female characteristics associated with certain games that young boys played, and it was viewed as appropriate for boys. However, majority of the girls would feel alienated when they saw violence, when they saw fighting, when they saw repetition, and when they saw mindless car racing and so on a regular basis. So the computer industry basically had a negative impact on girls' performance overall because the games that they were creating were for the market associated with young boys. Ultimately, the computer industry learned from research in terms of games that girls like. Young girls tend to want games that are purposeful, that are practical, that show and demonstrate real-world problem solving. Games where they see familiar environments, those games that are collaborative, cooperative, and there should be multiple scenarios for win-win outcomes as opposed to everybody becoming a loser and one person becoming the hero in winning. Young girls also prefer complex social interactions between characters and characters with whom they can identify on a personal level. Generally, little girls do not like violence. With regards to parents and educators, they should work in partnership and they should all become technology literate. They should acknowledge and respect gender differences. Both parents and educators should teach to girls cognitive style, cooperation and collaboration desires. They should create purposeful computer activities that engage and involve them mentally or cognitively. And finally, both parents and educators should attempt to create girl-only technology groups so they feel comfortable playing the games with other girls who prefer similar games. There are some recommendations for parents, for example. So as a parent, we need to learn about gender stereotyping, and we can discuss these with the young girls. We need to teach them about women's contributions to technology. We need to provide appropriate role models in every capacity. We need to empower little girls by asking for their input and sharing it with educators and technologists and the industries. We need to provide lots of praise and support and place computers in central locations where they can access it, and also in the meantime be able to collaborate with others, either in the family or in libraries. There are role models that we need to promote. For example, the next time you use a navigational device or software like Google Maps, thank Dr. Gladys West, the inventor of GPS technology. So women have made lots of contributions in our civilization. We need to bring that to the front and we need to highlight it, sort of like the Hidden Figures movie did in Hollywood. So we need to do more of this in the area of technology as well. We need to be open to the possibility that there might be different paradigms, different mindsets, and different ways to look at the same situation, circumstances, and come up with new and creative solutions. With regards to recommendations for educators, we need to make gender and technology a priority in our school system. Engineer the classroom for collaboration, place computers in neutral areas, use computers across the curriculum, and offer computer classes at different times than art, music, etc. So more of both boys and girls can enter into the information technology field, which obviously is the future in today's artificial intelligence era. Some things to consider regarding IT or information technology is that technology is a vehicle for creating a fair educational, employment, and social environment for various minority groups. Technology is especially complementary to the needs of marginalized groups, and technology can provide opportunities for these groups while respecting the cultural heritage of nations and diversity of their people. We can use appreciative inquiry to transform our industries and our organizations. Appreciative inquiry is an organizational transformational tool that focuses on learning from the past and current successes as opposed to focusing on the deficits and problems. So it's a way of promoting your strength or having role models that have done it in the past and promoting them so there can be opportunities for being positive and aiming beyond our current limitations. So appreciative inquiry focuses on discovery, on dream, on design, and destiny. So these various elements allow us to be like Disney World. If you build it and can imagine it, eventually it becomes a reality. So appreciative inquiry is one tool that we can use in diverse environments to help those with disabilities as well as other minorities in your city, in your industry, and in society in general. Overall, we need to be reflective and inquisitive by asking questions like, what is gender discrimination and does it still exist in my workplace in these modern environments and in these developed economies, such as the United States, France, Germany, Canada, Italy, and other places around the globe. And we need to figure out and explain why such disparities and inequalities exist and what can we do about it. As mentioned by Winston Churchill, diversity is the one true thing we all have in common. So celebrate it every day. Josh Bersin mentioned that companies that embrace diversity and inclusion in all aspects of their business statistically outperform their peers. So diversity is not just something to celebrate, but it's something to use as a competitive advantage by diversifying your workplace through inclusion, through equity, and through accessibility of resources for all of your employees. Regardless of whether you're in the information technology industry or others, through equity and inclusionary practices, you can make diversity an advantage for you, for your teammates, and for your organization overall. Good luck.